Good morning. Good Tuesday morning. I am gonna go quick. I'm sorry I haven't really gotten much sleep. My son is sick. He's been up a couple times. So you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. That's what I have to tell my kids. So um the whole world is falling to shit and India says hold my beer. Nuclear-armed India accidentally fired a missile into nuclear-armed Pakistan. As an escalating Russian offensive in Ukraine further inflamed military tensions last week, India fired a missile into Pakistan in what it said was an accident. It would have been a costly mistake if Pakistan decided to return the favor, as the two countries are both nuclear armed, with a long and bitter history with one another. Pakistan reported an unprovoked violation of its airspace, and the Indian Ministry of Defense said Friday the launch of the missile was a deeply regrettable accident and emphasized that there was no loss of life. India and Pakistan have been engaged in a bitter rivalry since they parted ways into their own independent states in 1947 and have fought three major wars since. This turned mostly into posturing in 1998 when they both achieved nuclear capabilities. The two nations regularly test missiles back and forth, but the supersonic missile that India shot into Pakistani territory was not a test. In the course of routine maintenance, a technical malfunction led to the accidental firing of a missile. Pakistan has demanded a joint investigation into the incident and alleged that India failed to immediately inform Pakistan about the accidental launch, which took place on March 9th, but was acknowledged by India only 2 days later. Because that's all we need, is another two countries going buck wild. U.S. astronaut to ride in Russian spacecraft home. Mark Vande Hei has been, I think that's how, Vande Hei, Vande Who, has made it through nearly a year in space, but has to ride a Russian capsule back to Earth in the midst of deepening tensions between the United States and Russia. NASA insists that his homecoming plans at the end of the month remain unchanged, but many worry that Dmitry Rogozin, and you'll hear more about him in a little bit, is putting decades of peaceful off-the-planet partnership at risk, most notably at the International Space Station. Vande Hei, I'm going to say his name that way, even if it's wrong, who on Tuesday, which is today, breaks the U.S. single spaceflight record of 340 days, is due to leave with two Russians aboard a Soyuz capsule for a touchdown in Kazakhstan on March 30th. The astronaut will have logged 355 days in space, setting a new U.S. record. The world record of 438 continuous days in space belongs to Russia. NASA's Space Station Program Manager, Joel Montalbano, during a press briefing Monday, said Russia's space agency has confirmed that they're ready to bring all three back, Vande Hei and the two Russians. A NASA plane and a small team will be on hand in Kazakhstan as usual to whisk Vande Hei back home to Houston. Just make sure those Russian dogs don't check his bag for drugs, because we know what happened to Brittany Griner, who's still in Russia. Former NASA astronaut Heidemarie Stefanian Piper, whose father was born in Ukraine, concedes it's a difficult situation. We're sanctioning Russia. Companies are pulling out of doing business in Russia. But then yet you still have the U.S. government, the space agency, doing business with the Russians. You can't push a button and separate the two sides of the space station. The astronaut was asked, Vande Hei was asked if, they've discussed the war or something like that. And he's like, no, we haven't talked about it. I think it would be bad if, you bring that up and start having that conversation. So it's good at least that people, when they're in outer space, are capable of not talking about or dealing with the goings on down in the world. So Elon Musk has challenged Vladimir Putin to single combat for Ukraine. The richest man in the world has challenged Russian President Vladimir Putin to single combat. The world thought it was a joke. Um, he tweeted out, "I hereby challenge Vladimir Putin to single combat," who wrote Putin's name in Russian. Stakes are Ukraine. And he wrote Ukraine in Ukrainian. Do you agree to this fight? Russia's space program director, Dmitry Rogozin, which I mentioned earlier, quote tweeted Musk's challenge with a piece, "The Tale of the Priest and His Workman" by Balda. You little devil are still young. You are weak to compete with me. It would only be a waste of time. Overtake my brother first. Musk's challenge came after a series of late night messages, which included a bizarre meme in which Musk joked about Netflix producing a film about a black Ukraine guy falling in love with a transgender Russian soldier. I mentioned his child's name, and then he tweeted pronouns suck. On Monday morning, he also tweeted, "By the pricking of my thumbs," a quote from Macbeth that ends with, "Something wicked this way comes." So I feel like the richest man in the world had gotten in a bag of shrooms or something, because I'm pretty sure that Vladimir Putin is very well versed in hand-to-hand combat. And Musk was asked, "Have you thought this through?" And he's like, "I'm very serious." ah, bringing a bit of levity to the situation. Perhaps that's the answer. 2 years into the coronavirus pandemic, and Fauci hopes the world will not forget lessons from a catastrophic experience. The answer is, we don't know. I mean, that's it. Fauci told CNBC when asked what may come next for COVID vaccinations. Given the durability of protection from the shots, it's likely we're not done with this when it comes to vaccines. Everybody wants to return to normal. Everybody wants to put the virus behind us in the rearview mirror, which I think what we should aspire to do. But he said we're going in the right direction as cases, hospitalizations, deaths decline. He pointed out we've gone in the right direction in 4 other variants before the pandemic took a devastating turn. What we're saying in January was it's coming, it's real, get ready. This is the executive director of the World Health Program. What I was most stunned by was the lack of response, the lack of urgency in relation to the World Health Order's highest level of alert. That lower level of urgency appears to have settled in once again. Congress sidelined new funding for the COVID response despite Jen Psaki's warning that they need to fund and secure critical supplies. She said that without more aid, the U.S. risks dropping testing capacity within weeks, running out of monoclonal antibody drugs by May, and exhausting the only medicine to preventively protect immunocompromised by July, going through antiviral pills by September. I'm concerned, CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla, said on Friday morning about the lack of new federal funding. He noted that because vaccine boosters and antiviral pills are only cleared through emergency use, the government is the only allowed purchaser. So if the government doesn't have money, nobody can get the vaccine, Bourla said, which is really interesting. I found out yesterday, thanks to my wonderful friend. The CEO of Pfizer is a veterinarian. So, the feds admit to breaking the law with delay in case against alleged January 6th rioter. Federal prosecutors admitted Monday to, quote, losing track of one jailed defendant in the storming of the Capitol and conceded that the indictment against him should be dismissed, but they urged the judge to permit charges to be refiled because of the seriousness of this alleged attack on the police during the January 6th riot. There was nothing intentional or nefarious about the delay. It was an isolated incident, unlikely to happen again. And the time frame, which undoubtedly regrettable, is nevertheless not significantly egregious to warrant dismissal with prejudice. This is the assistant attorney Jennifer Rozzoni. During a chaotic afternoon hearing held by video conference before U.S. District Judge Randy Moss, defense attorneys for Denny, which is the rioter, dropped their earlier bid to dismiss the case and instead sought to have him plead guilty before prosecutors could add more charges to a single count indictment a grand jury returned last week. The move seemed to take prosecutors and the judge by surprise, since defendants almost never plead guilty at a federal court arraignment on grand jury indictment. This obviously is nothing I was prepared to decide today, said Moss. An attorney for Denny, William Shipley, said he hoped the quick guilty plea would preclude the government from obtaining a grand jury indictment of his client on charges beyond the single charge of assault on a police officer. Furukwai ruled that the government had violated Denny's rights under the 1974 law designed to expedite criminal proceedings in federal court. However, the judge said he could not release Denny because on that same day, as his first court appearance in Washington last week, prosecutors obtained a single count grand jury indictment charging him with assaulting a police officer with a metal pole amidst the January 6th riot. To be sure, the government failed to comply with the Speedy Trial Act in this case, but there is no evidence of bad faith, a pattern of neglect, or something more than an isolated incident that resulted from a number of unfortunate factors. This article goes through the timeline of when, he was put in jail and all of that stuff. But the fascinating thing to me here is, we violated the law, but it's okay because there's, it was just a one-off. We only violated it one time. If this had happened in a civil court or a criminal court, lower court, it would have been dismissed due to procedure. It's like I didn't read to him his Miranda rights and he talked to me. So all of that is no longer admissible. It's the same concept, but because it's federal, you're not held to the same standards. This is why nobody fucking trusts you people. Julian Assange denied permission. This is going to go long today. I'm going to go fast if I can. Julian Assange denied permission to appeal U.S. extradition by UK's top court. Britain's top court on Monday refused WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange permission to appeal against a decision to extradite him to the United States to face spying charges. The court said it refused because the case, quote, didn't raise an arguable point of law. Assange has sought for years to avoid a trial in the United States on a series of charges related to WikiLeaks, publication of a huge trove of classified documents more than a decade ago. A British district court judge has initially rejected a U.S. extradition request on the grounds that Assange was likely to kill himself if held under harsh U.S. prison conditions. U.S. authorities later provided assurances that the WikiLeaks founder wouldn't face the severe treatment his lawyers said would put his physical and mental health at risk. Let Jeffrey Epstein know about those assurances. Not that I care, but, In December, the High Court overturned the lower court's decision, saying the U.S. promises were enough to guarantee Assange would be treated humanely. Monday's news narrows Assange's options, but his defense team may still seek to take his case to the European Court of Human Rights or challenge the original judge's other findings. I just want to go back to this Jamal Khashoggi situation. So we had a journalist that was executed by another government, and that's just awful. But the treatment that Julian Assange has gotten for publishing factual information, nothing that he published was a lie. Nothing was untrue. And because he published the truth, we want to treat him like an animal in a cage. It's just fascinating who we prioritize in this world. The U.S. is watching China after reports that Beijing is preparing to aid Russia. Mr. Price, whoever that is, declined to comment on the status of Mr. Sullivan's meeting. Remember I told you he was meeting with China yesterday. Which he told reporters was ongoing as he stepped into the briefing. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki referred to the meeting as, quote, an intense 7-hour session that reflected the gravity of the moment. During her briefing Monday afternoon, she said that the United States had laid out its position clearly. She commented on China's ability to aid Russia, which she seemed to say would be ineffective when faced with a united response from NATO-aligned nations. If China were to decide to be an economic provider or take additional steps there to Russia, they only make up 15 to 20% of the world's economy. The G7 countries make up more than 50%, so there are a range of tools at our disposal, she asserted. Psaki went on to say that there would be consequences should China choose to support Russia economically or militarily, but would not specifically say what those consequences would be. The vow was similar to the warnings that the White House issued to Russia in the days leading up to the invasion of Ukraine, when the Biden administration threatened vague but damaging consequences of war. That is your Tuesday morning edition of Everything Yesterday This Morning. I hope that you guys have an absolutely spectacular day, and I'll see you in the morning.